The title from Emmett Fox is The 7-Day Mental Diet. The subject of diet is one of the foremost topics of the present day in public interest. Newspapers and magazines teem with articles, and bookshops are filled with volumes unfolding the mysteries of proteins and vitamins. Experts are saying that you become the thing you eat. This is perfectly true as far as it goes, but I'm going to deal with the subject of dieting at a level infinitely more profound and far-reaching in its effects: mental dieting. The food you furnish your mind determines the character of your life. The subjects that you allow your mind to dwell upon make your surroundings what they are. As thy days, so shall thy strength be, is a quote from Deuteronomy chapter 33, which in modern language may be translated as thy thoughts, so shall thy life be. Everything in your life today, the state of your body, the state of your fortune, the state of your home, the present condition of every phase of your life, is entirely conditioned by the habitual tone of your past thinking. And the condition of your life next week and next year will be conditioned by the thoughts and feelings that you entertain from now onward. In other words, you choose your life.
So appropriate to what I was called to talk about. Well, when we started this service, I was aware of 3 people within the broader community, not just of this church, but other communities that Phyllis and I are involved in, who had died within the last week. And when Lori came on, she told me that her mother died yesterday. So we have 4 deaths. And I was led to an article, and we'll go from that article, about death in a sideways way. But I want to be clear that I'm not talking about death for death's sake, but as a reflection of the season, the putative or alleged birth of Jesus Christ, and what it means in the Christian tradition, and what it can mean to those of us who are on a spiritual walk, and take perhaps a more nuanced version of the story of Jesus the Christ. I'm going to read this verbatim to you, or close to verbatim, to get us started. It was written by a rabbi, and the title is God Needed an Admin in Heaven. The subtitle is A Christian Administrative Assistant Taught Me Everything About Life, by Rabbi Jeffrey Salkin. And the article starts like this. It happens without fail. Every year, precisely at this season, I think of Katie. When Katie walked into my synagogue in 1993 to apply for the position of rabbi's administrative assistant, I could not have known that, A, despite a resume that hardly indicated any potential, she would be vastly qualified, and B, how important she would become in my life. Neither could I have known our relationship would come to embody the most profound truths of Jewish history. Katie was a young woman from a tough working-class background. She had no high school diploma. But after a few minutes of conversation, it became clear that although she had never graduated from high school, she had a master's degree from Life University. Not only had she studied at Life University, she could have become a teacher's assistant there and could even have taught a few graduate classes of her own invention. That is why I hired her as my administrative assistant at the synagogue. Her career decision did not go over very well with her friends, and at least with some of her relatives. Rabbi, she said, I take a lot of blank from my friends for working with Jews. But hey, a job's a job and God is still God. So here's what happened. This tough young woman started off working for Judaism. And within a short period of time, Judaism started working for her. The mother of an upcoming bat mitzvah girl was giving Katie a tough time about scheduling bat mitzvah lessons. The girl, of course, had many other things to do in her life: schoolwork, soccer, cheerleading, hanging out with friends, and watching television. Rabbi, Katie said to me, I don't get it. These people are dissing you big time. They don't realize what an amazing thing they got here with this Judaism stuff. And you know something? I ain't afraid to tell them that. Which, by the way, I do. How had she learned about the amazing thing Jews had with this Judaism stuff? I'd asked her to type a list of questions for each Torah portion that would help the kids think about the meaning of their portion, and then to write their sermonettes. You know, Rabbi, these questions that I've been typing for you, she said to me, I hope you don't mind that I've been thinking about them too. I gotta tell you, these questions that I've been typing, these are the only questions that really matter. We in the Jewish community talk, and we should talk, about the many Gentile and Jewish adjacent spouses, partners, and family members who've thrown their lot in with the Jewish community. I refer to them as Jews by Velcro. So too, we have wonderful relationships with many religious leaders who bless us in our work and in our mission. But we don't talk about the Katies in our midst enough. We do not talk enough about the non-Jews who work behind the scenes and in front of the scenes to enable Jewish life in our institutions. The administrative assistants, bookkeepers, custodians, soloists, musicians, sometimes early childhood teachers, sometimes executive directors. They serve us with love, and let's face it, sometimes that takes a lot of patience. As Moses was to learn, we are not an easygoing people. But the way we treat them reflects on us, on our entire tradition, and ultimately on God. As my late teacher, Eugene Borowitz, once said, God cares more about how we treat the janitor than about the precise order in which we light the Hanukkah candles. Over the years in which we worked together, I came to see Katie as representing something larger and something deeper. Think of all the villains there are in the Hebrew Bible: Laban, Pharaoh, Amalek, Goliath, Haman. The list is rather long. Then think about the unvillains. Think about the non-Israelites who aren't villains or Jew haters, but who, in fact, are righteous people who have redemptive relationships with the Jews and who learned something from us and taught something to us. Katie was not only my colleague, she became part of my family. Several years later, she became quite ill with lupus. She became so ill she could no longer work for me. And yet, a few years later, she was better, and she came to work for me once again, this time in a different synagogue. During her illness, she had gotten her GED, had formally graduated from high school. During her illness, she learned how to design websites. During her illness, she became a very good writer. This is what she would say to me. I just know that when I die, I'll get the answers to all my questions. What do you believe about this stuff, Rabbi? She would ask me. I said to her, there's a beautiful teaching that says that in the world to come, God gathers the righteous together in a huge circle, and they all spend the day together studying Torah. To which she said, that sounds cool. Katie's lupus eventually claimed her. She was only 44 years old. They buried her in the old Irish Catholic Church of her rebellious and tough childhood. I remember how she told me during one of her bouts with lupus, I'm not afraid of dying. It's when I will get the answers to all my questions. I pray God answered her questions. And those answers better be good ones. So we look in this story to a woman who is finding a way completely outside the tradition, the rules in which she'd been raised. To way to change her life, as Emmett Fox talks about, to take charge of its function. There's a book I came across recently called The Ministry of Comfort by Dr. J.R. Miller. It's from 1901. And I was reading it this week, and he talked about something that is important in the story of Katie, in the story of Jesus, in our stories. And I've taken several pages and sort of synopsized it to a couple of sets of words. He wrote, "If we think only of what lies in the little dusty circle about our feet, we miss the glory for which we were made." Now bear in mind, this is a Christian outlook. I don't know if we in the spiritual world think so much of transitioning to glory, but we miss the broader perspective for which we were made.
You start the quote again.
Phyllis wants me to say it again. If we think only of what lies in the little dusty circle about our feet, we miss the glory for which we were made. And then he goes on to say, we should persist in lifting our thoughts to things that are unseen and eternal. We should lose no opportunity to get glimpses of things that are imperishable. And that's what I want to emphasize today. If we stay fixated on the here and now, we lose the opportunity to transcend or to have everything in perspective, to understand that we may not get the answers to our questions now, but we have infinite time. He reminds us of this at length, this writer. We are immortal beings. What we don't learn now, we have infinite time to learn. What we don't get right on this earth, we have infinite time to get right. And that's what he's talking about here. Lift our thoughts to things that are unseen and eternal, the infinite, because we are immortal. And that should take a lot of pressure off getting it right now. In fact, it's my particular belief that the more we pressure ourselves to understand everything right now, the more we obstruct our being able to understand it. Much less understand it when the timing is right, when our capacity to understand is right. We came from the other side. Jesus the Christ came from the other side. Sister Pepper used to quote the Bible and explain Adam and Eve, when they were driven from the garden, they donned coats of skin. Coats of skin. When we do this, we end up separated, at least a bit, from the eternal, because we have the limitation of these coats of skin. And as Dr. Miller says, if we worry about this dusty circle about our feet, which incorporates this coat of skin, we're going to lose track of proper perspective. The rabbi talks about the non-Jews who have supported Judaism. Last week I read a story of a farm family who one night found themselves hiding in the barn, or found hiding in the barn, some children who'd escaped from the nearby concentration camp. And they knew if they took them in and were caught, they'd all be killed. But they also understood, whether they had it in the same set of words that I'm going to use, that there's an infinity out there, that we are immortal and righteousness is immortal. They took the children in and they hid them for 4 years. Every day, not knowing what would happen. So, from my perspective, every time we come into this world, we lose a piece of our awareness. And I believe Emmett Fox talks about it in other places too. If I can put it this way, we come into the womb, part of us dies during this early part of our life. I've had experience, and I've heard it talked about often enough, where children, up to about age 5, they're talking to the people on the other side. They're getting information that we would call psychic information, and then they lose it, most of them, because they become more engaged in this dusty circle of life. Jesus, whether we give him the exclusive title that Christianity does, or simply that he was a great teacher, one of the many cosmic Christs who came, he donned a coat of skin which separated him for those 30 years from total connection with the infinite. Total connection with the immortal being that each of us is. The immortal being that lives, that spark lives in our souls, in our hearts. Christ, cosmic Christ, made the choice to come here to help us in this limited place become more aware of our infinite capacity, our immortality, the ageless truisms of righteousness, of love. That's where Christ and the birth come in. What we didn't get from his teachings this time, what we won't have gotten by the time our time comes to an end here, it doesn't matter, because we have all eternity to learn. Whether it's coming back here again, as many people believe, whether it's going someplace else, whether it's remaining in the spirit form, as the book The Boy Who Saw True talks about, it doesn't matter. We are infinite beings, immortal beings, in infinity, to live, to grow wiser, to grow more loving, to grow whatever ways none of us can conceive of in the here and now. At the same time, I want to make the point that the process that Jesus went through, gestation, here and gone, if we choose in this life, and Emmett Fox says we can choose, we can go through this awakening and understanding time and time again. And when we get it, then we can move on to another rebirth and another new set of understandings. Or and I've seen examples of this, we can say, hold on, that's all I want. And we will live just there unless or until God, as Benjamin Franklin talks about, whacks us hard enough so we learn something more that we didn't want to. We don't have to make that choice. And a number of people choose not to and aren't forced to because they have infinity to learn. But we don't have to choose that. We can present ourselves as malleable, learnable, teachable spirits, even here while we're wearing coats of skin. Okay, God, what do I need to learn today? Here I am, God. Help me not be blind. Help me to understand a bit more. And I want to encourage you not to think in terms of, okay, I better read this book, and I better read this book, and I better read this book. God doesn't exist in books. He can give you ideas in books. But I see so many people who've read books, so their whole mind is filled with it, and they're not receptive to the non-rational, non-linear, non-direct inputs that all of us get, whether or not we hear them, whether or not we choose to heed them. What Christ taught us, at least in my experience, every time I go back and take another look, there's another piece to understand, but I wasn't ready before. The secret is allow your understandings to be reborn. Allow your understandings to mature, to settle in, and then be ready for the next birth. And for those who have left this world, whom we know in the last week, they're not gone. And most of us understand that. They may come back and talk to us. Lori was talking before we started about how her mother, apparently right at point of departure, came and visited her at night. Walk in the faith of God. There's the old Quaker song, which I won't try to sing. Walk in the light wherever you may be. Walk in the light that everyone can see. Jesus walked in the light. Each of us, to whatever extent we've been willing and ready and able to, up to this point, has been walking in the light. And we can walk in the light more, we can claim more of the light, we can be ready for more leadings in the light, we can be ready for rebirths of understanding. And we can be ready for walking in the joy of being with this infinite love, infinitely overseeing divine, this infinite existence of which this is only one small portion. Will we miss those who have departed on this earth? Absolutely. With luck, they will come visit us. By everything I hear, if we make the choices in our belief pattern, when we leave this part, we'll be visiting them too. But that is part of our belief pattern. So let us, using Christ as an example of walking in the light while we're wearing clothes of skin, move with joy, be open to new teachings, be open to new lovings, be open to miraculous healings within ourselves as new understandings come about, as we are ready for more healing within. And in our walks, be ready for those nudges where we can help someone in their walk. Just as the rabbi hiring an unlettered, ill-educated woman was instrumental in her growth and her conclusion that when she did die, God was going to give her her answers. And I claim for all of us, even while we're walking in this coat of skin, God will continue to give us answers. We thank you, God, for having brought us together today, for having brought together those who needed to hear this message. I thank you, God, for having so clearly given me the message to give. We thank you for having given us another season to share, to grow together, to love together, to serve. For all this good, dear God, we give you gratitude for guiding us as we depart from here to do your work and to do our learnings. And we thank you for guiding us back here so we in this community can share again. We thank you for this community. We thank you for all the relationships that have developed here, for all the shared caring and the shared prayers. And we thank you for building us and guiding us to whatever's next. For all the good that occurs, all the guidance you've given us, dear God, we say thank you, thank you, thank you. And we all say, Amen.
Amen.